The Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, you and I privately had this conversation through text messages about the way reporters are using this moment to criticize Trump in ridiculous ways. And one of them was this questioning of whether or not he should describe these drugs that have some promise, which many doctors are describing. Hydroxychloroquine with Z-Pak and zinc apparently is a combination that keeps getting brought up. And there's a doctor that has been using this to some reported success in New York City. But what drives me crazy is that these are rare opportunities that someone has to talk to the president, and they're using it to chastise him for bringing up drugs that do show promise and hope. He's not telling people to go take it. He's not advocating it. He's not pretending that he's some sort of a medical professional. He's just talking about some things that show promise in the medical community. You know, what is your take on all this? Because this is it's a weird situation that he finds himself in with the press. This very strange and antagonistic position.
Yeah, you know, the press needs to figure out who they want to be. And it's actually like chapter 2 in my book. It's called "Who is Your Hero?" And that conversation is about who we think we should be. Like, what kind of people do we think we should be? What does it mean to be a good American, a good citizen? The press believes it is their duty to only be adversarial to politicians, mostly conservative politicians. They don't treat Democrats the same way. And that is their job. Okay, I wish they would treat all politicians the same. And to an extent, that is their job, to be adversarial, to question what is coming out of government. But I would argue that their main purpose is to simply educate the public with full sets of facts, full context, full understanding of what's going on. I think on that point, they're utterly failing to a huge extent. And I think they've been failing for a long time. But in a time of crisis where it's so important that they actually do that more important thing of informing the public, they're really failing. And they completely waste time. I mean, how many reporters actually get access to the president? I bet there's hundreds of thousands of reporters out there, good ones, who would love to be able to be in that press briefing room and actually ask legitimate questions that would inform the American public. But they don't. They play these gotcha games. You know, they'll ask questions like, what do you want to say to people who are upset with you right now? It's like, what? How is that a good question?
And how is that news? Right. In the middle of a pandemic.
I mean, it's so utterly absurd and unnecessary. I actually have a whole list of questions. I won't read them all, but they're a complete waste of time. And I think they're failing us miserably. And then there's the opportunism that occurs. Like, listen, if you're writing an op-ed, if you're a journalist writing an op-ed, let's say an opinion journalist, especially, I fully understand why you might write in your report, okay, the president said this today, but 3 weeks ago they said this, so there's been a change. That's fine. That makes total sense. That provides context to the reader. Even it might be biased and that whatever, but to only do that indirect questioning with the president just to try and play this gotcha game, it's not helpful. It's not helpful at all, and it's not informing anybody in the least. You know, you mentioned the president talking favorably about the chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, and you remember the couple that ingested that out in Arizona, because that something similar to, I think it's a chloroquine phosphate or something like that. I might be misspeaking.
It's poison,
but that's an ingredient on fish bowl cleaner, fish tank cleaner. And so they saw it and they ingested it, which was obviously a terrible idea. Nobody told them to do that. And then the media, instead of saying, "Wow, this is a shame that they did this," they blame the president, and they blame the president for talking about what is at least anecdotally, a proven way to combat this disease. We don't know through clinical trials whether in mass it'll actually work, but to express optimism over it, it doesn't seem to be a punishable offense. But the outrage mob was fully invested in this kind of outrage reasoning to tear down the president over this, and it just feels so unnecessary. I mean, that's right. That's why I wrote this book. The book is about outrage culture, in our like this sort of weird new cultural need to just go after each other in the worst of ways.
Well, there's a new ability to do that. I mean, this is what it is with these new tools that people have through social media and through making these viral video clips, which is what each reporter is hoping is they're going to accomplish by being combative with the president and trying to catch him on something. They're hoping that they're going to create this viral video that's going to accelerate their career. It's very self-aggrandizing. It's disturbing that there's not someone who stands out that does these sort of press junkets that doesn't do that.
Yeah. And I actually write about that exact point in my book. Like this, what we've begun to do is reward this sort of, I would say, overly passionate emotional behavior. So we've replaced sophisticated reasoning with outrage. You know, we've started to change who we actually view as heroes. This is how I describe it. We all have hero archetypes. Okay. And we grew up this way, and there's like fictional characters like the Jedi, like that's like a hero archetype, or Superman, and we kind of look up to this person, or like real characters like Rosa Parks or Jesus. Like there's people that we actually look up to and we identify with, and there's certain attributes that we use, and we say, I want to be like that. And so when I act in public, I'm going to access that attribute, and I'm going to be better and according to that archetype. And we've sort of turned that on its head in our current outrage mob culture. Like we see somebody who plays the victim and we cheer them on. When in reality, what we used to do was see somebody who overcame adversity, who was a true hero, and then we cheered them on. We've totally reversed that.
Yeah.
And so you actually get more points if you're more snarky, if you're meaner, if you're playing this kind of cheap shot game. And like in my book, I use this example of like this group of veterans. They were waiting for me outside of my office one day as I was going to vote, and I knew something was off because veterans my age, we never wear the ball cap, you know, like with the gold letters that say veteran on it. We never wear that, but these guys were wearing that. So that was my first sign that something was different about these guys. But they just asked for a picture, and I figured that was it, and then we'd keep going. But the second thing that was off was like they weren't looking at the camera. They were fiddling as I was like posing for this camera, for this photo. And that was strange. And it turns out they were just getting their own video camera ready to record. And then they start following me and like just go nuts. Like they lose their minds, talking about Trump and betraying the country and just all this nonsense. And
so they were just trying to have a gotcha moment with you.
Yeah. This is what they do. They're an activist group, and they'll corner people like me and try and get like a viral video going. And then, you know, it's up to me at that point to just like understand what's happening and just kind of walk silently. And I kind of engage with them in some funny ways, but they were becoming extremely emotional. I mean, their voices started to crack. Which was, you know,
and what were they saying about you or to you?
Oh, how could you betray the country by supporting the president? I mean, things like that. Mostly sloganeering. Like this wasn't a deep conversation by any means, but that's the point. The point is that they're rewarded for that like overly emotional, in motion, like, you know, filming while walking type of scenario. And then then there's this whole deal where I have to get in the elevator because that's how I get to the votes. Like I leave my office on the 4th floor in Cannon. I take the elevator down to the basement and I walk across. Like that's just my route. And so, but what they do is as I get into the elevator, they're like, "Oh, he's hiding from us. He's running away from us." And the Newsweek like writes up the same story. Like there's this entire culture behind this notion that you have to use as much emotion as possible and express your anger in the most exceptional of ways. Otherwise, it's not worth listening to. But we haven't stopped as a culture, and we have to stop rewarding it. And that's what I talk about. We have to stop rewarding that kind of behavior so that it actually ceases to control us that way.
Well, they accomplished what they wanted to do. We're talking about them right now. Although you didn't give up their name, good for you.
No.
But you talked about them, and that's what they wanted. I mean, there's so many groups out there that are, I don't even know if they have an end game. The end game seems to be just get attention. And, you know, and shine the light on these atrocities or whatever they feel like is an atrocity. Right.